How to score 30 out of 30 on the TOEFL speaking section. It comes down to 3 simple things. 1. Understanding exactly what you need to say to get a high score. 2. Taking effective notes. If you write down the right points, you'll be able to answer easily. 3. Practicing until you know the questions so well that answering them becomes automatic. Hello, I'm Anastasia. I scored 119 out of 120 on the TOEFL test, and I have been helping students score 100 plus for more than 10 years. Today, we'll go through a complete speaking test together, so you can see what the speaking section is really like, and how to get a high score. Let's get started. As you probably know, the TOEFL speaking section has just 4 questions. The first one is the independent speaking question. You'll have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to answer. Let's give it a try. Answer the question yourself first, then continue watching to hear my response. Ready? Let's go. I don't agree that money and power define success, because for me, success is more about achieving personal goals and finding happiness in life. Someone might not earn a lot of money or have a lot of influence, but they can still feel deeply fulfilled by their work. For example, I have a friend who runs a small community art studio. She doesn't make a fortune, but she loves helping others express themselves creatively, and that brings her a lot of satisfaction. Also, having good health and strong relationships is crucial. You could be the wealthiest person in the world, but if you're lonely or unhealthy, it's hard to feel truly successful. In my Zoom lessons, I see the majority of students struggle with this specific question. This usually happens because they 1. Worry too much, 2. Overthink their reasons and examples, and try to say something very sophisticated, and 3. Try to fit 2 reasons and examples into 45 seconds. As a result, they end up scoring much lower than they could. However, there are a few tips that can help you ace this question and stop being afraid of it. 1. Don't give 2 reasons if you're a slow speaker. Instead, give 1, but explain it well. You don't even realize how having 1 reason instead of 2 makes your life easier. You no longer need to come up with 2 reasons. And you also don't have to rush. This way, you can speak confidently and consistently. 2. Don't rush. If you speak too fast, you will make more hesitations and mistakes. Keep your speed natural. If I try to speak very fast in a limited amount of time, of course I'll panic and start saying things like and so on. Instead, imagine you're explaining your point to a friend and speak at that pace. 3. Don't focus on grammar and vocabulary on test day. When you practice at home, record your answers and then listen to them to spot grammar mistakes. Focus on fixing those mistakes until you're accurate. For vocabulary, write down 5 words you might use for each question and practice answering the question with them a few times. But on test day, focus on your ideas, not grammar or fancy words. 4. Avoid being too formal or informal. Again, imagine you're talking to a friend. Keep it fairly informal, but avoid slang. It's still an exam. If you do this, you'll see that answering this type of question will become a lot easier. Finally, tip number 5, start each answer the same way. It's important to memorize specific openings for each type of question. For agree or disagree questions, you want to start your answers one way. For the preference question, another way, and so on. This way, on the day of the test, you won't be thinking, oh my god, what can I say? How should I start? Instead, you'll have a clear structure in your mind and a few seconds to collect your thoughts as you begin with a familiar phrase. This is where templates come in handy. These are simple structures that help you organize your response and include all the important details in a short amount of time. They can boost your score from 23 to 27 in just a few days. So make sure to use templates in your preparation. I often see students with an excellent level of English who keep scoring 22, 23, or 24 simply because they either don't use templates at all or use them incorrectly. You can find high-scoring templates in our TOEFL course by clicking the link below. Now, question 2. It's a question about campus announcement. Here, you'll need to read a small announcement and then listen to a conversation between two people discussing this announcement. You'll then need to say what the announcement is about, what the active speaker's opinion is, and what 2 reasons he or she gives to support their opinion. Remember that questions 2, 3, and 4 are all integrated questions, which means they require you to understand some information first and then produce it in a limited time. This is where notes are most important. I know some students who actively use notes when they speak, while others prefer to avoid following them. But whether you use them or not while speaking, you need to have them to ensure you capture all the necessary information. As you read, write down the main idea of the text and the 2 sub-ideas. For example, the university is going to renovate the library. Why? Because it's 1, too old, and 2, overcrowded. Then, as you listen to the conversation, write down the active speaker's opinion, use A if they agree, and D if they disagree. Also, write down the most important keywords for both reasons supporting their opinion. This way, you'll know exactly what information you're looking for and what you should include in your answer. If you want to find out more about this question, feel free to watch this video later. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the upcoming speaking section practice videos. Let's begin!
Now listen to 2 students discussing the newspaper article.
You know, this makes so much sense. I wonder why it took them so long.
Oh, I don't think it makes sense.
Why not?
Well, I don't think you need to have similar interests to make friends. Look at my roommate and me. We're completely different. I mean, she's a French major and I'm studying biochemistry. She's really into sports and well, let's just say I'm not very athletic.
Yeah, but you guys are good friends.
Exactly. That's my point. We get along great.
I see. But you have to admit, there are a lot of cases where...
Yeah, I know. Cases where people decide they have to move out. But, well, nobody moves out just because they don't have the same interests as their roommate. Maybe they have very different schedules or
they have a chance to move to a better location.
Yeah. Anyway, my point is that there's no reason to expect a big drop. People are still going to want to move.
For all kinds of reasons.
I can say, the university plans to match freshman students with their dorm roommates based on similar interests, believing this will help them get along better and reduce the number of students who want to switch rooms mid-year. However, the speaker disagrees with this idea. First, she argues that students don't necessarily need to have similar interests to become good friends. She mentions that she gets along really well with her roommate, even though they don't have much in common. She's studying biochemistry while her friend is majoring in French. She's not very sporty, while her roommate is really into sports. Second, she believes that no one chooses to switch rooms simply because they have different interests. Most of the time, students decide to move because their schedules are very different or because they want a better location. Since there are various reasons why people end up switching dorms, matching them based on interests won't solve the problem. If you want to answer TOEFL speaking questions without hesitation, panic, or mistakes, click on the link below and enroll in our TOEFL course. We'll teach you how to take effective notes, speak confidently, and most importantly, provide high-scoring templates for each question to boost your score. We'll also go through TOEFL reading passages together, analyze each question type in detail, and much more. For those of you who have been struggling with the TOEFL test for a long time and want personalized feedback, you can choose our Pro package and get a consultation with me. I'll evaluate your writing and speaking and tell you what you should do differently to get a better score. Question 3 is another integrated question. Again, you'll have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak. This time, the reading and listening will be a bit more academic. You'll read a text explaining some concept, then listen to a lecture which will provide an example or explain the same concept in even more detail. Your job is to summarize both the reading and the listening. My tip for this question is to remember the 20-40 rule. You should spend no more than 20 seconds summarizing the reading and at least 40 seconds summarizing the lecture. This way, you'll have more than enough time to include all the necessary details.
Okay, so schools are a good example of a place where this can happen. We have schools, of course, as a place for children to be educated, and teachers are hired to actually educate the students, right? Their job is to ensure that the citizens of our society will have an education. But in order for teachers to give children a good education, there are various requirements they need to impose. Like, for instance, coming to class on time, which is important, right, for the learning process to go smoothly. It's directly related to making sure kids get a good education. But sometimes these requirements, well, they can actually work against students getting a good education. Like, say in one school, they have a policy that students must always show up to class on time. And a teacher in that school, to ensure that students show up on time, this teacher insists that if students arrive late, they aren't allowed in the classroom. And no matter what the reason, anytime a student shows up late, the teacher enforces this, won't let them in the class. Well, although the policy seems to be in the best interest of a child getting a good education, because it's meant to ensure students get the most possible learning time, well, think about it. If students do end up showing up late to class for whatever reason, they'll have to miss the entire class, which means they'll miss out on the opportunity to learn. So in effect, too much emphasis on the policy can get in the way of the child's education.
The reading passage is about goal displacement, which happens when people in an organization focus too much on rules and procedures meant to achieve a goal. As a result, the organization's ability to reach its objectives is hindered. In the lecture, the professor provides an example of how goal displacement occurs in schools. He explains that teachers are hired to educate kids, and they must follow many requirements to facilitate the learning process, such as arriving to class on time. However, sometimes these requirements adversely affect kids' education rather than help. For example, if a school policy requires students to show up on time, a teacher might insist that latecomers cannot enter the classroom. While this policy might seem beneficial, ensuring students have the full learning time, it can lead to students missing the entire class if they're late for any reason. So placing too much emphasis on this seemingly positive requirement might ultimately get in the way of their education. Finally, it's time for question 4. You'll have 20 seconds to prepare this time, and the same 60 seconds to speak. You'll listen to an academic lecture, and then you'll need to summarize it. Here is a small tip from me. Use fewer, longer sentences instead of many short ones. This will help you fit the same number of details into 60 seconds. I usually do a session with all my students on complex and compound sentences. And after they start using them, they're able to give their answers fluently without rushing too much at the end. This happens because they learn how to present a lot of details in a short amount of time. This skill is the key for this question, as well as for question 3. Let's begin.
Many animals travel in groups in order to protect themselves. This makes it difficult for a predator to capture them for food because it's hard for the predator to target one single animal and stay focused on it. But there are ways that predators can overcome this problem. Let's look at a couple of strategies some predators use. One way in which predators can hunt animals that live in groups is that they can identify an individual animal that looks different from the others. An animal may have a particular feature that makes it stand out from the others. For example, there's a small fish called a minnow. Minnows usually swim together in groups, and most minnows appear similar to each other. But sometimes there's a minnow that's a different color from the others, and what scientists have discovered is that predator fish will often chase after this differently colored minnow because it is easy to see. So the predator can more easily focus on it and catch it. Now, another way predators can hunt animals that live in groups is by physically breaking up the group in order to separate an individual animal from the rest. Sharks, for example, have been observed to swim directly into a large group of fish and thrash their tails around in order to scatter the fish. When the shark moves its tail so forcefully and so fast, It breaks up the group of fish into smaller groups that start swimming away in different directions. Then the shark can more easily locate and go after an individual fish that has become separated from its group.
The lecture is about two strategies predators use to target and capture a single animal when prey animals are traveling in groups for protection. The first strategy is to identify an animal that is different and thus stands out from the others. For example, when predators are targeting minnow fish that look very similar to each other, they will try to spot the one fish that has a different color. In this case, it becomes easier for the predator to focus on the distinct animal and catch it. The second strategy involves physically breaking up the group, so the target animal becomes separated from the rest. Sharks, for example, often swim directly into a large school of fish, trashing their tails forcefully and quickly to cause the fish to scatter. As a result, one fish becomes isolated, and the shark can easily track it down. That's the end of the speaking test. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below which question was the most challenging. Also, tell me which section of the TOEFL test you're struggling with the most. If you're currently preparing for the test, enroll in our TOEFL course, and we'll analyze your speaking responses to find out exactly what you need to do differently to get a higher score. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tips and tricks on how to ace the TOEFL test. And remember, scoring 100 plus on the TOEFL isn't rocket science. It's the little things you do that make all the difference. As always, I wish you all a stellar TOEFL score. Until next time, bye-bye.